This is Jeffrey St Laurent, the live Tuesday call, and I just spent quite a bit of time with the people that have called in, going over the topic today, which is avoiding the entrepreneurial slump, or as a made-up term, I call it the E-slump, and it's that space where we get into where we just can't produce, right? Or just like we're out of a zone. Nothing seems to be working for us. As much as we want to get in our office and do things, it's like, oh, we just can't for some reason. And so I wanted to address that because especially I have noticed that I had 3 calls yesterday with my mentoring clients, and it's like every single one of them was in that space. I was like, oh man, there's something that needs to be addressed here. So I wanted to bring that up. Before we get going though into that, just real quick, all these calls are recorded. You can check it out on my website, sellingcoaching.com, under the university. Also, I got a great private Facebook group. If you want to check that out, even from my website, best place to get there at sellingcoaching.com. Right at the top, you'll see a link there that says join my private Facebook group. So you can check us out there and just click join if it's something that you are interested in. But I want to jump right into the topic today. And like I said, I spent some good time with the people talking about where they're at and what they're going through. And one of the things I want to address is kind of what they are going through. So part of it is just knowing that you're not alone in this. And the thing about being an entrepreneur, and I refer to it as an entrepreneur versus a coach, because this is a common thread through all entrepreneurs. And being an entrepreneur requires understanding this aspect for us. And that aspect is the fact that we're humans. And as humans, our business is just one small component of our life. And we have a lot of other responsibilities and things going on in our lives. And we can't control all these aspects of our world. And so, there's our relationship, there's our health, there's finances, and there's all these other components that we're responsible for, and how they interact and affect other people. And these things have a real effect on us as entrepreneurs. And with all this being said, we've got to realize that how this affects us, obviously, it's hard to just shut that down sometimes and like walk into your office and like just kind of turn into Superman or Superwoman, right? And just like kind of rip the clothes off and have our superhero, business person underneath that, our clothes, and be like, okay, now I can just produce, because this stuff happens in our world that affects us. And it could be within our business, things that are happening within our business, or maybe because things aren't happening in our business, or things outside our life, outside our business that are affecting us. No matter what happens, the thing we've got to realize is that if we're going to be doing this as a full-time business, or if you're ever going to get to the place where you're doing this as a full-time business, we can't allow these things, and we'll go into some detail on that, but we can't allow these things to pull us away, or pull us away for very long, meaning more than a day at least, or say at most, because we've got to be consistent in our business. Results are created from consistency over time. To me, there's no better formula for success than just consistency over time. And then we go, oh, well, consistency of what? Well, consistency of actions. Well, then we've just got to figure out what are the actions that are the most, revenue or result producing in our business, and do those consistently. So if I can break success down, if I can say with our business, it's that. And so if I go into the consistency piece, that's why it's so important to be able to figure out and recognize, number one, these slumps, if you will, these spaces where we're just totally out of it and are having challenges producing, they're real and they'll never go away. And I'll say never, absolutely. I'd love for you to prove me wrong, but at the end of the day, we're human and this is going to happen. And so I say that to be very direct because you can't expect them to never go away. The difference is how long they take you down for and pull you away from being consistent in your business. And so our goal here is from a mindset perspective is we want to be able to shorten our downtime by some solutions and strategies that we know work for us. And when I say work for us, I'll get more specific and say you want to shorten them with strategies that you know work for you. So we can talk about some of those strategies today, some things that work for me, some things that other people shared, et cetera. You can talk to other people. But what I'm going to suggest is that no matter what happens, you've got to figure out what will work for you. So vitally important. And once you understand what works for you and how you work as an entrepreneur, how you're able to produce, how you're able to stay in the game, how you're able to come into your office and do whatever you need to do to get into that space, that's going to be vitally important. So I say this for myself as, I've been an entrepreneur not just since 2004 when I started my full-time coaching business, but even prior to that, like 10, 15 years, even coming out of high school, actually even further than that, because in high school, I did work at a supermarket. That's the only time I was ever actually employed. But I had a painting and landscaping business. Like I was always entrepreneurial. I was like cutting people's grasses and billing them, and that was when I was like late teenager. So I've been an entrepreneur for quite a while. And when you get in that space, we've got to be able to learn how we work in those situations. I want to start off with some of the things I was speaking about with the people, because this is an important aspect to know. We don't want to focus on what brings us down, but what brings us down is a very common space. And even one of my calls yesterday, one of the questions my mentoring client asked me was, it's like, well, I just want to get in that space where things are clicking and I'm moving forward and I can keep moving forward, right? So it's almost like I don't want to get in that slump again. And they asked me, they're like, well, does that ever happen? And as I just said now, I'm like, well, no, it never happens. It's just a matter of like how long you're taken down for. Some of the things that, that I can concur with, but some of the people that were saying at the beginning of the call was they get in this space where there's too much on their to-do list, right? So it's a space where I've got so much going on and I really don't know where to get started. One of the biggest threads that I've seen with coaches as I've been working with them is especially people that are, they know they want to do a coaching business. Let's say they're going through a school or some type of a certification, to become a coach. And as they're either going through or finishing up or becoming, quote, certified, there's the big question like, now what? Or I have no idea how to start this. Or even after you've been doing it for a little while, in some cases years. I've got some mentoring clients that I'm working with who have been doing this 5, 6 years, 7 years. And they're just like, they're still confused on, how do I do this? Where do I begin? They take some time off and you come back refreshed and you get in your office and you're excited, but it's like, well, what do I do? And so that's often a big reason why we can't focus, is because we're inundated with ideas and information, not only just from emails that we receive or courses and products, and everyone's involved in Facebook groups and online and social media. So and we're all learners. Like as coaches, we want to learn, whether it's personal development and we're bettering ourselves personally, but then also professionally as well. Like you're on a call like this, so you're understanding, like I teach selling coaching and how to transition to a full-time business. So you're constantly immersed in this information. So you're getting all this information and ideas. And then if you're truly an entrepreneur, at least I know myself and other people I've worked with, is we have ideas all the time. It's just like you'd be lying in bed in the middle of the night and be like, oh my God, I got this idea, or I want to do this. And you think it's like the most clearest, awesomest, just best idea you could ever have. And then it's going to be like so successful. And then it's like you wake up and you either forget about it, or it's just like you're like trying to figure out how you can implement this. But it's distracting you from everything else, There's a lot of things going on in your life, and all these ideas, they pull you away from focus. If I talk about the entrepreneurial slump and, really what is that? Essentially defining it as it's pulling you away from focus. And I like to take a look at the word focus and say, focus is not a word that you can pluralize. Meaning, like how do you say focuses or foci? I have many focuses. Like it doesn't work. You can't pluralize it. Focus, you think of like a laser beam as an example, right? And a laser beam hits one target. It's one thing, and that's all we can ever do. I published a book a little while ago, and it was called Being Fulfilled, and it's taking a look at the different areas of our life and how do we, as an example, grow a successful business without neglecting the other areas of our life, like our health, our relationships, for instance. And And a lot of it came down to, our scheduling and taking a look at what hats are we wearing at a given time. Like, for instance, right now I'm doing the live Tuesday call. I'm not trying to check my email right now. I'm not trying to, do my laundry or make my grocery list or text my son back, whatever I'd be texting him back, right? I'm focusing on what we're doing here. And sometimes it's easier when, if I'm with a client, I don't have any trouble focusing, but it's when I don't have that in front of me, how do I focus? And that's part of that is being able to work with your business hours and schedule your time better. When I say scheduling too, scheduling is different for everybody, in terms of how we can block off our time and what we can do in that time. But a big piece of what I found is recognizing that if the slump means we're out of focus and we're trying to focus on too many things, or we're just burnt out for that matter, we need to be able to understand and tell ourselves what we need to be doing in a given time frame. So like if you're going into your office, let's say at 11 a.m. in the morning, for instance, and you don't have anything scheduled like a client or something like that, then if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing and you haven't told yourself and written down, these are the things I've got to be doing, then it's going to be much easier for you to get distracted and pull yourself away from what you want to be doing, and that's when you get closer and closer to that slump, and that pulls you away from it altogether. So if you're not quite sure, like, what should I be doing? Where do I start? That's some of the biggest things that you've got to start looking into. Comb my university at sellingcoaching.com. I've got some calls in there, but talk about like type in like revenue producing activities or activities, scheduling your day as a coach. I know I've got some calls and some videos on things like that are going to help you talk about some of the activities that we do on a daily basis. But figuring out some of those pieces are going to be a really big space, a really big thing to help keep you in that space. Another thing going along with the scheduling piece that one of the people was talking about and that I can relate to really well is we get to this space in our business where we work really hard and we start to create some activity. And if you haven't been in this space, it's good to know about before this happens, meaning we're doing activities, we're doing all the right activities, we're focused, we're getting clients, we're getting leads, we're getting interaction, and we're getting really busy. So in other words, not only with the activities that we're doing, but as a result of that, and the people we're talking with, the events that we're doing, the clients that we're handling, the administrative stuff we've got to do, and then on top of that, our whole lives, it's almost like there's not enough time, right? And we start to get burnt out from or tired, or we can't even handle, let's say, what we're doing. And so that can create a situation where, number one, you could get in a slump where it's just like, I can't do this anymore. I got to slow down, and you just start to feel like you're just detaching from your business a little bit. That's one thing that can happen. Or even if that doesn't happen, one of the things that can happen is, and this is mostly the case with a lot of entrepreneurs, is that you get to the point where you get so busy that you can't do the activity. You actually don't even have time for the activities that got you to that place. Mostly it's those marketing activities, those activities that are the ones that are, getting you the business that you have. So with either situation, what happens is we slow down, or we stop doing the activities that got us busy, the activities that we need to be doing consistently. And then what happens is the existing business that we have, or the existing results that we have, they start to slow down and they start to go away. And then we find ourselves in that space where, I need new clients, or I need more clients, or I need to make more money, or I need to start doing something again. Now we don't have the business anymore. Now it's like we've got to start from almost, it feels like ground zero again, to do all the activities that got us the business in the first place, that overwhelmed us, that got us in that slump. And sometimes when things slow down, that can get us in that slump again, because it's like, I don't have any business anymore, or I don't have any clients, or I need more clients. And just the fact that we're there then can slow you down and bring you into that slump. So that's where, either of those situations, whether you've experienced that before or not, it's good to start to understand that, because a lot of coaches who are newer, who aren't in that space of creating results or clients, that's all they want to do is get those clients. But it's important to recognize from the beginning that, that's why I talked about that scheduling and pacing yourself. And one of the people who called in called it like finding that rhythm. They want to find that rhythm for themselves. And that's where that business model I talked about in terms of a schedule is vitally important. I did a call not too long ago called The Day in the Life of a Full-Time Coach, where I kind of talked through my schedule and what I do on a daily basis. So I won't go into detail about how to do all that stuff, because I went to a detail on that call on the Selling Coaching University. You can type in that, a day in the life of a full-time coach to listen to that call. But that's where it's finding the schedule. Like, for instance, I do these Tuesday calls, and a lot of my marketing in terms of my emails and my communication with my audience is framed around this live event that I do with my mentoring clients. That's what one of the things, once we get them going, is I help them with is starting to create a framework around maybe that one weekly live event that they have, whether it's a meetup group, maybe it's a Facebook Live. And again, it doesn't have to be an hour live call like this. It could be a 10-minute Facebook Live for that matter. But the point is that one live weekly thing, and we can set up a framework around that. And that can then dictate our activities that we do each day, because it's based upon what's happening with that event. Before it, we're inviting to it, we're making awareness of, and we're creating content of it. Afterwards, it's talking about what happened. It's sharing some content around that. It's interacting with the people that came to the event. And then like towards the end of the week, it could be sharing the recording, so forth and so on. So that can start to set up a framework for us, and that can set up more of a pacing for us. So that can start to solve two of the challenges that I talked about today, that can get us into that slump, is doing so much to the point where we get overwhelmed, or just have to back down, or burnt out, or just have to stop our marketing activities, and then hitting that low afterwards. And then it also addresses another aspect too, where we don't know what to do. It's like, now what? And this will help us determine, well, what do I do on a Monday? Okay, well, Monday, one of the things I'm going to do is I make sure I talk to everybody and get the word out for my call. Start to create some information about it, start to hype it up a little bit, use that content in an email, use that to post in different Facebook groups. That dictates what my Monday is. And so that helps you when you go into your office. For instance, with that example, like when I go into my office, outside of clients, I know I've got to do that on a Monday. I don't leave my office till I do those things, and I bullet point them and I get them done. That helps keep me focused. One more thing I want to start to address around this area is more of the mental aspect of this entrepreneurial game, and that's the pressure we put on ourselves for results. One thing I said to my mentoring client yesterday, which helped her, but it's something that I tell myself on a daily basis and remind myself of frequently, is that I'm in this for the long term. Like, I'm going to be doing this business for the rest of my life. Meaning, I don't know what it's going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, but I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. So what's the rush? It's the same thing like when I used to do personal training and in the fitness industry and helping people, releasing weight or, with their fitness goals. I'm like, you're going to be doing this for the rest of your life, right? Isn't that the intent? Isn't it? Right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to lose some weight for a cruise or for this event. It's like, yeah, might not be the initial motivation, but if you're going to really be successful with this, you want to do it for the rest of your life. So if you're going to do it for the rest of your life, what's the rush? So if you don't lose the pound today or tomorrow, well, if you're going to keep doing it, well, you're going to get there eventually. It may or may not be in the time frame with which you want to expect. However, you'll get there at some point, won't you? Absolutely. So that's where it goes in, that pressure you put on yourself for results. We want everything now or yesterday. And the fact is, when it comes to especially being an entrepreneur, here's the thing about it is you can't force results in this world. You can't even set goals for results. Meaning you can't set a goal, and I'll explain why, but you can't set a goal, I'm going to get 5 clients this month. You can't set a goal for that, because what are you going to do? You can't predict and get the 5 clients, that it will actually happen, that you will find 5 people where their need and the timing is right, where they're going to actually hire you. But here's what you can set goals on. You can set goals on the activities you do that will create those clients. Right? So if you know that, let's just say generally activity X, Y, and Z, if I do these are the activities that will generate a client. Well, we can now set goals on, okay, well, how many calls am I gonna, make every day? How many people do I want to interact with on a daily basis? As an example, and okay, I'm gonna do 15 people here and 20 people there. And if I do that every day, I know that eventually that's gonna lead to getting clients. Well, so then we can start to say, well, you can have in mind, well, I want to have 5 clients this month, but it's impossible to predict that. But we can take a look at those activities and have that goal of the activities. And then after, let's say, that month, see what that produced. If I did 5 of this and 5 of that, and at the end of the month, it produced 2 new clients, and I had wanted 5, well, now what we can do is we can up the goal of the numbers of the activities that we do, and we can also look at refining them to become a little bit better at it. And then at the end of the next month, we can start to see, okay, well, that produced 4 clients. You know what I mean? As an example. So some of those expectations, a lot of it is they're uneducated expectations. I hear so many people coming out of a school or launching their coaching business, and I'm going to get 5 clients this month. But they have zero idea of like how it's actually going to happen or what it really takes in order to actually to do that. I will say for doing this full time in myself, and as much as I'm invested in this, and as long as I'm doing it in the database that I have, I can't remember the last time I got 5 clients in a month, like 5 brand new paying one-on-one mentoring clients. It has happened, but other than doing a live event, that's typically when it's happened for me, when I've done live events where I'm in front of 100 plus people, and over the course of the follow-up over the next 2-3 weeks, I will have gotten my 5 or so new clients. But if I'm not doing any live events where I'm specifically in front of 100 or more people, and I'm using that number specifically, then it's very rare to get 5 clients in a month's time frame at least. So we've got to educate our expectations, and we've just got to slow down and give ourselves a little bit of patience and back away from. I'm not saying lower your standards, lower your goals, anything like that. Dream big, but pull away from that a little bit and just say, hey, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. Let me start to do this, one day at a time, and start to learn, start to see what happens. Start to back away from the outcome so much as understanding the process you're going through and taking a look at, is this the right process? How is this working for me? That's a big piece of it. There's so many of us that want everything to be perfect. We obsess and we overanalyze, and we have these ideals, but a lot of time those ideals of that perfection and what we want to do, those are the very things that hold us back. And I like to say, perfection is just a protection mechanism, because I'll often ask somebody, well, do you consider yourself a perfectionist? And they're like, yes. Or from observations, I'll say, it seems as if you're a perfectionist. And they're like, absolutely. And then I'll follow up and say, well, do you believe perfection's possible? And they'll say no. And I'm like, all right, so here you are, this perfectionist, but yet you don't believe it's possible. So it's a protection mechanism for most of us. And of course we want to do things great, and we want to have this, strong, high ideal of results and things that we put out there. The reality is, though, entrepreneurship doesn't reward perfectionism. It doesn't reward thought out, processed things. It rewards action. It removes shaking and moving and doing. I said yesterday in my email and then in my Facebook group, I'm like, money like speed, results like speed. They happen when you get out there and you start doing something. Like if you're a mentoring client of mine, some of the things I've been doing lately is like, okay, hang up the phone. This is after our first session, and I'm like, go to meetup.com, start a meetup, and have your first event, a couple of days from now or this weekend. And we're talking on like a Wednesday. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, do it. I talk them through it and stuff like that. And then next thing you know, we have a call the next week, and they're like, wow, I've got 50 people in my meetup group. I had 5 people attend. And now we're starting to talk about the conversations to interact with the people to hopefully get a client out of it. But that's what I mean by moving and shaking and doing, and that's how you start getting those results. So we start to overanalyze things and overprocess things and have these perfectionistic type thoughts. it slows us down, and we can't create results because we're either not moving at all or moving very, very slowly. And the things that we are doing aren't even the right real activities. So those are some of the mindset aspects of it. And the last thing I found, and I'm talking about these because these are all things that I've gone through, and I don't go through them as much now because I understand myself, and I'm a lot more relaxed around the space that I'm in, only because I understand how I work. Meaning, if I start to get into a slump, if I start to not feel confident, or oh yeah, things aren't working, or start to doubt myself, I can back down. I can back away from it. I have the strategies to pull myself back into it. I start looking at some of the things that I've accomplished. I start boosting my own self-esteem, so to speak. Start recognizing the person that I am and that I'm capable. Even some of the people that I talked to at the beginning of this call, they said that, I believe I'm great. I believe I have a lot of skills and I have a lot of education and I'm smart. I have a lot to offer. But then, I start doubting myself, and then I don't know what to do. And then it pulls us away from our own greatness, and we start doubting our own greatness. And that's the space where we can't produce in. So oftentimes it's like, well, how do we remind ourselves of our greatness? And often what can pull ourselves away from that greatness is by comparing ourselves to others. All of you are, and myself, right? I know a lot of you are in my Facebook group. You're in other Facebook groups. Like I said earlier on the call, you're getting emails left and right from, all these other coaches and gurus and people selling you stuff and trying to help you with your business and earn your first 6 figures in 6 days, right? Ridiculous things, all these shiny objects. And we compare ourselves, to these people who seemingly are doing all these wonderful and magnificent things. Meanwhile, you're sitting in your pajamas, being depressed, in the middle of the day, not knowing what the hell to do, and just being like, I suck. That's really what can happen. But we can't compare ourselves to others because, number one, you don't know what other people are going through and what the reality of their results and or their success is, for that matter. And lastly, it doesn't matter what the results are. What matters is where you are and what you're doing and what you're going through, and where you are is where you are, and being able to honor that is a very important piece. There are some things as you're starting off, or even as you go into long enough, that you're just not going to know, and how could you know them? That's why, obviously, working with other people, mentors like myself, for instance, it helps. It can cut down on some of that stuff. But even with that, I said to one of my mentoring clients yesterday, I said, you know what? I can help you with a lot of things. I can definitely help that learning curve in a lot of areas. But there are some things that no one, not even myself, can teach you, that you've still got to just go through and learn yourself. And that's the case with everything. And even if I could teach you it, and I could talk with you about it and walk you through it, it's still not going to matter until you actually experience it yourself, right? There's just some things where you can't cut that down. And that's where, going into that space of and knowing how to get yourself back into that space and refocusing on your greatness and where you are and giving yourself permission to be where you are. Those are some of the biggest things that are going to allow you to, continue forward. Because the reality is nothing is fast. Nothing is fast. Nothing is fast especially as you want it to be. There are times where things could feel like they're starting to move, but at the end of the day, it's all still the same pace. The difference is, like I say, success is just one more step in a series of steps. So when that next step happens, and let's say you get your first client or things start moving, you're still just walking at, if you will, at that same pace, but now just maybe each step or maybe the last few steps, you've just started to create results. So it could seem as if things are moving a lot quicker, but they're really not. You're still just doing one step at a time. So you've got to remember, the steps you're taking now, they're just bringing us one step closer to that success. There's a great book that was written a while ago by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And it's the outer perception of all these people, of these athletes or, these businesses that are having all these breakthroughs, and now they're, at the top of their game and they're earning millions of dollars and they're, X, Y, and Z. And to us from the outside, it seems as if, wow, they came out of nowhere. But if you talk to that person and you go back to their roots and you say, well, what was the one main thing that, turned it around for you or made all the success? And it's step after step. It's turn upon turn, push after push. And oftentimes when we're in that turn upon turn, push after push, it can get monotonous and it can be lost feeling, and we're alone. and it seems like nothing's working, and what the hell, I've been doing this, for so long, but nothing's happening yet. It's like, yeah, well, what if the next turn, what if the next conversation, that person became your client? And that's the reality of this. And sometimes it's more than you're willing. And that's where we got to ground ourselves back in, why we're doing this and where we're going. Before I just open up the call, one last thing, before I came up to my call, I was with my son because he's on vacation this week. And I said, hey, Keaton, if someone's in a funk and they're just, kind of like not being able to do anything and can't produce and they're out of a zone, how do you get out of that? How do you get back into that space where you start to do things and you're moving forward again? I was just curious, he's 10 years old, to see what he said. And he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, just try to think about something happy, and it kind of made me smile. And I'm like, yeah, it's true. What we focus on is how we feel. So if you start to think about something that's happy and you focus on it enough, it's going to start to shift. I did that actually last week. I was just having one of those mornings, and for some reason I just was on my phone and I just saw this, Jerry Seinfeld, one of my favorite comedians, has a show, Comedians in Cars Drinking Coffee or something like that, and I just saw like an episode with Obama, and I watched like 20 minutes of it. That was the whole show, and I was like crying laughing, and after that I was like, wow, I'm in like such a great mood right now, so it works. And one more thing he said he's like, do something different, like play a game or something that will take your mind off of it. And that's just another way of, when I watched that video, right, I did something and took my mind completely away from what was just pulling me down. And then when I came back at it, I looked at it from a different perspective. I was a higher level of energy. I was in a different mindset, and it didn't bog me down. It didn't take me down as much as it was, because that was my focus before, and it was killing me.